We'll go back to the record in C-18-333-684-1. Statement about emergency medical need McDonald, the defendant is in the back. It will be brought out shortly. Anything we need to...
No, you're not just inquiring, make sure you got my proposal first.
I did, thank you. I saw that they reported to me. You were on the original email, Ms. Mishler. I want to make sure that
Yes, Your
you
Honor.
also got them.
I received it.
The jury's all present, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Sitting judges get contempt Raman all the time.
I find you in contempt. I am going to incarcerate you.
Any statement that you make is under penalty of perjury.
No, that's not how that works.
We will take this case under submission.
That would require proof by very significant evidence.
The court finds in the best interest of the minor child and makes the following findings.
For the record, I don't say these things to hear myself talk.
Reality of mortgages and children that need to see.
All right, let's go with that. The defendant has been brought out. Good morning, Mr. McDonald.
Good morning, Judge.
Let's go ahead and bring in the jury. And let's take a meeting with us. Oh, hold on one second. Hold on. Oh, hold on one second.
Pull one of those chairs.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, we're ready. And our witnesses out.
Yes, our witness is
Great.
Carol, can I grab these a bit for you?
All rise for the jury.
Thank you, witness, I appreciate it. All right, good morning, please be seated. Welcome back. Again, apologize for the delay. We all the way planned, somehow things go awry, but we are ready to continue with Ms. Ruiz's testimony. She's being brought in, and I'll advise the jury as well as counsel. I do have 2 questions. I haven't forgotten about them. I'm going to let this finish, the state finish with direct examination, and then we'll ask these questions if appropriate. Oh, okay. While we're waiting for the witness to come in, I'll give you guys a little preview of scheduling. We're going to finish this witness, and if I recall correctly, this is the last witness for the state. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Then the state will rest. The defense will have an opportunity to defend the case if they so choose. Again, they have no obligation to do so. We will have to take a recess at some point to settle jury instructions. That's where the court and the parties need to discuss those before they're given to you. You don't have to be part of that process. And trust me, you probably would not want to be. It's just a lot of legal talk. But once that is taken care of, we will bring everyone back for closing arguments and jury instructions. So we will see how today moves along. I know I haven't forgotten that someone has to leave town tomorrow, so we'll address that later on this afternoon and see where we are time-wise. All right? Welcome back. Good morning, Ms. Ruiz. I'll remind you that you're still under oath. All right, please go ahead and have a seat. And state when you're ready, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Welcome back, Candace. So yesterday before we broke, I had just played audio file number 03 on State's Exhibit 1. So you remember listening to that and the content of that?
I do.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you some questions about it now, okay? So whose voices did we hear on that call?
Mine and Michael's.
Okay. And was that recording of a phone call between you and Michael, the defendant?
It was, yes.
Do you remember where you were at the time of the call?
I do. I was off work that day, and I had gone back to my condo, so I was standing outside. In the background, you can hear motorcycles. So I was like standing outside of my condo having that conversation.
And am I correct that at some point in the call you made a reference to a dog bite?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell me who was it that had suffered a dog bite?
Our son Mason.
Okay. And whose custody was he in when he had the dog bite?
In Michael's care.
And that's the dog bite you were referring to?
Yes.
And also on that phone call, did I hear correctly, I think at least a couple of times you mentioned that you were going to go to the DA for something. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And when you were talking about going to the DA, what exactly were you talking about?
So at that time, I was not receiving child support, and it's an option for anyone to file with the district attorney if there's a court order and someone's not paying child support, to take that order to the district attorney and
Judge, who approached?
okay. So that objection is sustained in part. Ms. Mishler, if you could just ask what we talked about here at the bench.
Yes, Your Honor. Okay, Candace, and I don't need you to go into detail about exactly what your issue was, but regarding the child support payments, where exactly did you go to handle that issue?
There's a building on Flamingo, which is the district attorney's child support division, and that's where I went.
Okay. In that division, you didn't see myself or my co-counsel, Mr. Raman, there or anything
No.
like that? Okay. And
It's a completely separate, at least my understanding, it's completely separate than this building.
No. When you went there, you weren't asking anyone to file like criminal charges against him?
No, it's just to handle child support matters.
Okay, thank you. Now, also on that call, I heard you mention a decree, I think, at least once. Do you remember that?
I do.
Okay, what were you talking about there?
I believe in that
that phone call, we were discussing Michael not signing the decree of divorce. And the decree of divorce is what would come after our final, we had I guess a hearing in August to determine child support, custody, and so on. And then at the end of that comes a decree of divorce, which grants the divorce, and it has to be signed by both parties. And so that's what I said in the call, which was, I just want you to sign the decree of divorce. And that's what I was referring to, because that hadn't been signed.
Okay, so is it fair to say at the time of the phone call, the decree of divorce existed, but it had not been signed by Michael, the defendant, yet?
Correct.
And is it fair to say that on that phone call, we heard you use what I'll term some strong language?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm not judging you for that or anything, but...
No objection.
What's your legal basis, Mr. Mueller?
There's no question. She's not allowed to make speeches.
I was about to ask a question.
All right, that's overruled for now, but please ask the question.
Is it safe for us to assume that if your children had been with you at the time, that you would not have used such strong language?
Yes.
Court's brief indulgence. Okay, and Candace, I'm now going to move on to the next file we have, which is audio file number 04 on State's Exhibit 1. Actually, first I'll check my volume settings and then I'll do that.
And do what the judge asked you to do. And if you can't do that, then you will only see them the second and fourth weekends of the month.
Candace, I'm not going to accept what the judge...
Until I go back and ask for full custody. No, I have primary custody. I'm saying no visitation. I will go back and fight for that.
Candace, what do you really want? You really want to check?
No, it's not what I want. You know what I really want in my heart of hearts? I want you to be a healthy parent. That's what I want. You're not. You're not. Unfortunately, you are so sick that you cannot see that the choices that you have made in regards to this marriage and in regards to our children have landed.
Okay, Candace, so I just played audio file number 04. Do you recognize the voices that we heard?
I do.
And whose voices were those?
Mine and Michael's.
Michael, the defendant?
Yes.
And was that a telephone call between the two of you?
It was.
And do you remember where you were at the time of this call?
I do. I was standing outside of our daughter's daycare before I went to pick her up.
And you made mention of the fact that you might seek full custody.
Yes.
So at the time of this phone call, what was the custody situation with the children?
Michael had 2 weekends a month. It was the second and fourth weekend of each month. And that would be defined by Fridays. And then he would drop off at daycare or school on Monday and I would pick up.
Okay. And now I'm going to play audio file 05 of State's Exhibit 1.
They have to give you 2 weekends a month. It's almost impossible. But guess what? They gave it to me because they see what an unhealthy, unfit person you are. And until you come to terms with that and start really dealing with who you are, at the core of who you are, you will never get better and you will never be good for our kids. So you want to know what I really want?
You know how much I love
Yes.
you.
No, I'm not saying I believe that you love them. You don't know how to take care of them. You don't feed a child gluten after you've been told by her primary care doctor and the surgeon that she's got a severe gluten allergy. You don't feed her fucking gluten.
Okay, just promise me that you're watching Joe and he's not alone with our kids.
Joe has never been alone with the kid. The first time that Malia had her prolapse, I wasn't even seeing Joe. I wasn't seeing anyone. I wasn't seeing anyone. Joe is the first person that I have dated since we've been apart.
That's not true. Okay, but
Okay.
whatever, okay.
listen to my baby. I need you to listen to me, Michael. Think about your choices. Think about the things that you've done. Think about the things that you've said. Think about all the choices that you've made. This is all your own fault. It has nothing to do with me.
Okay,
The judge did not give you that much time because you're a psycho. Like when you started, she's a fucking pirate. Like she had no other choice than to give you 2 weekends a month. And you're lucky that you got that. You are lucky. You are lucky. You should be thanking God that you got 2 weekends a month because you don't even deserve that.
But would you give me time with him, Candace? Regardless, like, come on.
Michael, you need to listen to me.
No, it's not good for the kids.
You have not done anything to provide financially for your kids, medically for your kids. $200 a month? You're fucking kidding me. You're kidding me.
Candace.
You're kidding me.
Please.
That's what you're gonna say?
No, listen, I've been really hurt, Candace. My attorney killed himself. Like, what the hell?
No. You don't get to be manipulative. I don't fucking care. You pay what you're supposed to pay.
Okay, and that's all you want?
That is for our children, so that we can survive.
Okay, then promise me I'll see him more. Promise me you'll work with me.
I'm not promising you shit.
Let me say goodnight to
When
him.
you pay, listen to me now.
Let me go help.
When you pay what you're supposed to pay, I will be more willing because it will show me that you've changed. You have done nothing to show me that you've changed. Nothing. Nothing. I can't trust you. Until you make progress and you show me action with words. Because right now, all of your shit is just words.
I know. I've been very bitter, Candace. I've been bitter about this whole thing. I didn't want to be divorced. I loved you.
You don't need to be bitter. This is about our kids.
I didn't realize what I was doing to you.
You don't get to be in denial about the fact that Malia is gluten intolerant. You have to deal with it.
Okay, I will not give her gluten, I swear to you, anymore, okay? I'll do my best not to give
Buy them clothes and fit them.
I have lots of clothes for him, Candace. Thank you for giving me that, and I bought a bunch.
Buy them clothes that fit them.
I did, okay?
Mason and Malia need clean socks. They need clean underwear. They need clothes that fit them. I will go on Talking Parents, and I will give you a list of everything that Malia can eat. I will give you a list of all their clothing sizes and shoe sizes. You need to go out and buy them.
Candace, do you realize that, like Mason was feeding me for 75 days? You know that hurt me?
No, that's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about the time that you didn't see him. I'm asking you to go and do that, to show me that you've changed, okay?
Okay, promise.
You need to pay child support, and you need to pay the correct amount.
Promise me you'll let me see
You
them
need to
more.
pay child support, and you need to pay the correct amount.
Okay, can you let me...
If you do not do that, I will file with the district attorney.
If I do that, can you let me see them more, please?
If you quit your job, they will put you in jail. So I will make sure that they do that.
Okay, Candace.
Because you will pay me what you need to pay me.
Put me in jail, Candace. Then we're going to be doing appeals for years. Like, come on, please, just work with me. We could have solved all this together. Just give me joint like I wanted.
Yeah, you're right. We could have. But unfortunately, you were too stubborn back then. And guess what? I got a better deal now than what we had negotiated in the beginning.
Yes, we could have just we could have been together again. Like, we could have.
Okay, listen, that's not an option, so don't even talk about it.
Please, Candace,
It's not an
not
option.
good for you.
It's not an option. It's not an option. It's not an option.
Let me love you again, Candace.
No.
Please, let me.
It's not an option. It's not an option. It's not an option. It's not an option.
I'll get you whatever you want,
It's
Candace.
not an option. It's not an option.
We can move.
It's time for you to move on with your life.
I'm trying.
I am no longer in the picture, and you will not ever have me back because of what you
Candace,
did.
we're always going to be in the picture of each other's lives for the kids' sake.
No.
No, you want to cut me out of the kids' lives?
We communicate about the kids.
Do you really want to cut me out of the kids' lives, Candace?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, because you're not a healthy person.
I am healthy.
When you can show me that you're a healthy person, then I will encourage more of a relationship.
Candace.
But right now you're not healthy, and you're still not healthy, and you're still not
This is what both of our moms... This is what both of our moms...
Nobody gets a break from you. Nobody. Nobody's life is peaceful because of you.
Candace.
You make everyone crazy because you're so goddamn crazy.
I just want to see my
Why can't
kids.
you just see that?
I want to see my kids. I wish things could be prepared
You are so maddening. Do what you have to do, Michael, and I will be willing to work with you on time.
How?
What don't you hear about that?
How, Candace?
How many ways can I say that to you?
How will you work with me on time? Like, will you let me see the kids on my birthday?
I told you I will be more willing to willing to let you see them during the week, but not until you pay everything that you need to pay and show me that you know how to take care of the kids.
Will you give me right a
Because that is my
refusal?
biggest concern.
Can you let me do that, Candace? I promise you I will take the
Michael,
best care of them.
I'm going to tell you right now, they've already submitted the decree. The court is going to sign on your behalf since you're refusing to sign. There will be nothing added to the decree.
Candace.
Period.
Yes,
They're going to sign on your behalf. They're granting the divorce. They submitted it on Friday. It doesn't matter.
Submitted what?
The only hope that you have of seeing the kids more often is going through me. And until you do what you're supposed to do in order to care for your kids,
You didn't even let me see him for
I will
75
not work
days.
with you on time.
I will.
Are you listening to me?
I will, Candace. Work with me. Please let me see my own children. Like,
Okay.
damn.
You're not listening to me. You're not listening to me. What did I just say, Michael?
You said when I take care of the kids, I am, Candace. I swear to you. I will make sure they don't have gluten. I'll make sure they have clothes. I'll make sure you're getting your money that you want, that you need, I guess.
Okay.
Like, I just want to know that my kids are safe.
No. You will do those things or you won't see the kids.
I want to know my kids are safe. I want to see my kids
They're
more.
safe. They're safe. If you want to see them more, then do what you need to do. Every single last thing. You're going to pay for half of my credit card debt. You're going to get me out of this house. You're going to do all of that stuff, or you will only see them the second and fourth weekends of the month, period. You will start following the order, or you won't see them more, period. Because I cannot trust that you know how to take care of anything. And when you show me that you can, I will foster a more healthy relationship between you and the kids. But until then, it is my job to protect them from you. Yeah, 100%.
Like, this is exactly what both
You're
our moms
not
do.
listening. You're not listening.
I
You
can't.
don't understand. You still don't understand
Yeah,
that this is all your fault.
No, I don't understand how you could think that. Like, you could think that I would take care of my kids.
Okay, I'm going to just get off the phone
No,
because
don't.
we're not getting anywhere. Like,
Okay.
unfortunately, you are so sick that you cannot see that the reason that you only have 2 fucking weekends a month is because of yourself. It is your fault. You did this. It's nothing that I did. Everyone in that courtroom felt sorry for me for having had to be married to someone like you. The bailiff, the judge, the attorney. Everyone else can't be wrong about you, Michael. It's 100% how I feel. The best decision I ever made was to leave you.
Accept that, but please find somebody better than Joe. Like, I know you're
Who
better.
I date is not your concern.
That scares me that you're going to be around my
The
kids
kids
more.
are safe. I'm a good mother. I'm protected with my children. I would never date someone that would harm them.
Could you let me
And you need to
babysit
trust that.
babysitters, Candace? I don't know who's around my
Michael,
kids. Like, it's
do what you need to do. When you pay all of your debts and when you show me that you can take care of the kids, then I would be willing to consider letting you babysit. But not until you can show me that you can take care of the kids. They need new clothes for winter. They need new shoes for winter. They need socks and underwear. Malia cannot touch gluten. You are going to have to pack her snacks when you go places. You are going to have to make sure that when you eat at other people's houses that she has stuff that she can eat. That's what you do for your kids. That's how you take care of someone. When you show me that you can do that. When you return my shit, Michael. When you pay your bill. I'll consider.
Alright, I just want to see my kids. So I will do that, okay? And then, listen,
Just show me.
will you sign the...
You have a whole lot to prove.
I'll get your attorney the claim deed thing, okay? Let's just get that done. And then you can have your money, and I know you're probably...
Michael, the rest of the money that you owe me, too. It's not just about the house stuff. Okay, you have to have my credit card debt. You have to pay $1,000 towards the house stuff. You haven't done any of that.
Yes, I don't have any money.
But I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you right now. If you don't do that stuff, you won't see the kids. Period. Because that shows me that you're still not stable and you still can't follow direction and you won't be able to properly care for the kids. Hear me when I say that. I will come after you.
know Joe's background doesn't look good in court, you know that, right?
Okay, Michael.
Drugs and different things, like, yeah, okay.
Michael, how does he do drugs, and he never has done drugs?
The rape report, like,
The rape report.
yeah.
What rape report?
When he raped Nicole?
He didn't rape Nicole.
He didn't.
Uh-uh.
Candace, you're the one that told me about that, like,
Okay.
please,
That's accompanied by.
please don't, like, she fuck her, like, please.
Okay, who I date is not your concern.
Joe, Ruiz, Candace, like, I'll do whatever it takes, Candace, like, please, okay? Please, let me.
All right, show me that you can do whatever it takes. Show me.
Okay, and then
Show me.
what? Could
Show me.
could we ever be a family again? Like,
Show me what you can do.
then what?
Then what? I don't know. I guess you'll have to wait and find out.
Would you ever be open to that, Candace? Like,
Show me what you can do, Michael. Show me.
okay, and then what, Candace?
I want you to call my attorney today. I want to see action today.
Okay, and then what, Candace? We can be done, like, what?
No, I'm not
You can let me
going
see the kids
I'm not
more?
going to make any promises. I have to see consistency over a long period of time.
Would you ever get back with me?
You
Candace?
haven't done one fucking thing.
I know, I've been.
You don't deserve me. You do not deserve me.
You're probably right, Candace, but I do deserve to have a family, and I do deserve you to love you again and for a second chance, okay?
Get it done with it. Please try again.
Please, Candace. What was that?
Read it.
What was that? What's
I gotta
that?
go.
Wait, what's that,
I gotta
Candace?
go. I gotta go.
Candace, wait, don't go, please.
I'm done talking to you. Like, I'm gonna tell you right now, I know 100% we're gonna get off the phone and nothing will have changed.
I'll call your attorney. I'll do what it takes, okay? Just please,
Okay,
just
we'll
work
see.
with me. Let me
Okay.
see my children, all right? Like, that hurts me so bad, all right?
We'll see. When you show me that you can be responsible and that you can be stable and that you can take care of the kids and you can prove that to me, then we'll see.
Can we sit down and talk? Like, please?
No, there's nothing else to talk about. I'm getting off the phone with you. Goodbye.
All right, thanks, Candace.
Okay, Candace, I have a few questions for you about what we just listened to. Whose voices did we hear on that audio recording?
Mine and Michael's.
And was that a recording of a telephone conversation between the two of you?
It was.
And just to be clear for the record, whenever you say Michael, you mean the defendant?
Yes.
And do you recall where you were at the time of that phone call?
I was driving. I can tell because there was like my keypad. I was typing in my keypad to my condo.
Is that the sort of computerized voice that we heard in the background?
Yes.
Okay. Was it indicating like the wrong code at first?
Yeah, I typed in the wrong code at first. Then
That's sustained. Can you just rephrase your question?
Okay, I'll move on, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing that question?
I am. Okay, and Candace, what was your divorce status at the time of this phone call?
The decree of divorce had been like typed, prepared, ready, but it had not been filed yet. And then as of, I mentioned in the phone call that Friday, it had been submitted and the judge was gonna sign. So we were just waiting for that signature to sign, for the judge to sign on his behalf.
And when you say on his behalf, you mean on
Michael's, yeah.
And then backing up, one of the calls that we listened to yesterday, you mentioned that we could hear your daughter Malia's voice in the background. And you testified that she was 2 years old at the time. And correct me if I'm wrong, but she was saying, is it right that she was saying dada or something like that?
She was saying hi dada.
And how old is your daughter Malia now?
She's 5 and a half.
Am I correct in assuming that she doesn't talk that way anymore?
Right, correct.
Okay, she doesn't say things like dada?
No.
And so for all of the telephone conversations that we listened to today and yesterday, during what time period did those occur?
All of those phone calls were from October 2016.
And you testified yesterday that during your marriage, the defendant was employed by Geotabs.
Mm-hmm.
In October of 2016, was he still working at that job?
I don't know. I know that there were, well, yeah, he was, because child support was ordered based on that employment. So, yes, he was still employed.
Okay, at Geotabs?
Yes.
And were these 5 telephone conversations that we've listened to, are they all separate phone conversations that occurred at different times?
Yes.
And how can you tell that?
A lot of that is just the content. So, you know, for example, in one of the calls I say I'm going to have her allergy tested. In the next call I say I've had her allergy tested. I tell him in the phone calls that I'm going to, you know, see the pediatric GI, and then I say that in the next conversation, like I've seen a surgeon, you know. Also, just knowing when the CPS case was open, when the police reports were happening. On that last call, I tell him I'm going to go on Talking Parents and send him a message of the kids' sizes. I was able to find that that took place in October of 2016. I still have a record of those. So basically, you know, the time frame of when we saw the doctors and so on. It takes a little while to get in to see a specialist. So her prolapse happened like the last week of August, and then it took time for us about 4 weeks to get in to see the GI, for her allergy testing and so on. So I know that all of those happened based on the conversations that we were having and the content, that those were all October of 2016.
And for anyone who doesn't know, could you explain just briefly what Talking Parents is?
It is an app, or you can go online and use it as well. It is court monitored, where the judge in the family court case had ordered Michael and I to communicate through Talking Parents. Any communication that we were to have at that time was to go through Talking Parents, just so the courts could monitor it and make sure that, you know, it's for safety purposes, to make sure that both parties are communicating. Kind of the term that they use for that is like business, so that you would
things related to childcare.
Yeah, only, you know, there's no other reason to communicate on that in general, unless it's was about our children, or about like appointments or what have you. So.
And so Candace, so I want to turn you back to to the first time you listened to the recordings of these phone conversations, when you first realized that they had been recorded. After you listened to them for the first time, what did you do? Sorry,
probably
is that too big of a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you this. After you listened to these phone recordings, did you eventually go to the police?
I did.
Okay. Why did you decide to report this to the police?
I think that there were a couple of different reasons. Number one, I found out that it was illegal, and that, you know, like obviously I didn't give my consent, so I felt like it was, honestly, like, to be honest, I really didn't want to file the charges, or like I didn't want to file a police report, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to go through this process again. It's really stressful to come and to like be off work, and you know, I was raising 2 young kids, but ultimately I came to that decision because I spoke to my family about it, I spoke to my husband about it, and I think at the end of the day...
Objection narrative.
I asked why did she file the police report, so her answer is kind of expanded.
I'm going to overrule the objection for now. You may finish now.
I had to decide, am I going to be the person to walk away when something like that happens to you, like when you're victimized, or do I report it? And I think I decided, after really thinking about it, and talking to people in my life that cared for me. I want to be a person that stands up when something is done wrong to them. And I want my children to see that example in me. That if someone victimizes you, you don't walk away in silence, that you stand up to that person. And honestly, I don't know that I would do it again because, like I said, it's been very stressful and...
Objection, narrative.
All right, that's going to be sustained at this point. So, Mishler, give us another question.
Okay.
Or if you want to
Okay.
clarify anything, you may do so.
Okay. We'll move on. I think you answered that question, Candace. Court's brief indulgence. Candace, without going into details about reasons for why the custody arrangement may have changed, just at the time that you reported this to the police, what was the custody arrangement regarding your children?
I had primary physical and legal, or sole legal custody, and that arrangement was with Michael having no visitations.
And so regarding, and Your Honor, I have state's proposed exhibit number 3, which is something both you have seen and defense counsel has seen, and it's a certified court document of a decree of divorce for the divorce in this case. So I ask that just be admitted pursuant to NRS 52.125 as a certified public record.
All right, Ms. Mueller, you're still objecting?
Pursuant to the objections voiced yesterday, for the reasons outlined yesterday, I object to it.
All right, your objection is noted, it is overruled. It is a certified public document. It will be admitted pursuant to the NRS statute regarding public documents. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Of course, we indulgence. You've seen it before, we should with Mark. Partial foundation. And Your Honor, may I approach the witness with state's proposed exhibit 7? It's been shown to defense counsel.
You may.
Candace, I'm showing you state's proposed exhibit 7. If you would just take a look at, it's 2 pages, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just take a look at both pages and then tell me if you recognize it.
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
Wait, did you look at the second page as well?
Yes.
Okay. And so what is state's proposed exhibit 7?
This is an email. It's like a chain email between the detective, Detective Karchner, as well as Mark DeZero was also copied on these emails.
Are they fair and accurate copies of emails that occurred between yourself and Detective Karchner that Mark DeZero was copied?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state moves to admit state's proposed exhibit 7.
Relevance. Objection, relevance. What's the email, what does it matter?
That's overruled. Was admitted pursuant to the link of yesterday. This is the foundation has no name and is appropriate. That objection is overruled.
So it will be admitted as exhibit 7?
Yes, it will be. I'm being published in page 2.
Thank you. All right, court's brief indulgence. And I'll just need a minute to switch this over to the document camera. Okay. All right, and I'm going to adjust the settings, Candace, and then I'll show you State's Exhibit 7. So we have State's Exhibit 7 on the document camera here. And Candace, what are we looking at here?
At the top is a forwarded email I forwarded Karchner's email to Mark and asked him if he would call the detective. I provided the number, and then I mentioned I'll work on getting the videos to him. By that I meant the YouTube videos of our divorce, which he didn't need. So, but I just mentioned that in that email.
And is this does this indicate the date of the email here?
Yes,
Okay.
Thursday, April 12, 2018.
Okay. And then looking on the same page further down at the bottom, okay, do we see a separate email on the bottom of this page?
Yes.
What are we looking at here?
I provided for Detective Karchner Mark DeCiro's cell phone number and his email address, as well as a link to the Google Drive that Mark sent me with the recorded phone calls on them. And then I also included at the bottom of that the links to the YouTube divorce videos.
And what is the date on this email?
April 5th, 2018.
Okay. And then on the following page, is that just the rest of that email?
Yes.
Okay, and now we're going to publish on the document camera what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 3. And Candace, do you recognize on your screen what we're looking at here?
Yes, it's the decree of divorce for the divorce case.
Okay. And I'm going to go to the last page. And let's see. Okay, first, what are we looking at here where my pen is?
That's the family court judge's signature, Linda Marquise.
And what are we looking at here?
That's my attorney's signature, Russell Collins.
Okay. And do you see, what does it say here?
Decline to sign.
Okay. And can you tell me what that's indicating?
Michael refused.
Relevance.
Relevance? They refer to this on the phone calls.
Not a divorce case.
It's giving context to the evidence that's been admitted.
And it's overruled, you may continue.
Michael had declined to sign the decree of divorce, and so the judge had to sign on his behalf.
And I'm going to go to the top of page 3 on the same exhibit. And can you read that sentence where my pen is?
Sure. The parents shall provide each other with a travel itinerary and, wherever reasonably possible, telephone numbers at which the children can be reached whenever they will be away from the parents' home for 2 nights or more.
Now, Candace, the phone calls that we listened to, other than when you received them from Mark DeCiro, did you ever hear them being played on YouTube?
I did.
Okay. And were they just audio, or were there any video or pictures with them?
It was the telephone conversations with like a montage collage of pictures.
Okay. And then I don't need you to describe in detail what all of the photos were, but were they, is it fair to say they were private photos of you and your family?
Yes.
Okay. Were they photos that the defendant would have had access to due to being married to you?
Yes.
And was one of the photos a picture of you in your bra and underwear when you were pregnant?
Yes.
Now, court's brief indulgence. Now, Candace, in October of 2016, did you have knowledge of where the defendant lived?
Yes.
Okay. And did he live here in Clark County, Las Vegas, Nevada?
He did.
And during all of the phone conversations that we've heard in court, When they occurred, were you living here in Las Vegas, Clark County, Nevada?
I was, yes.
And were you physically located here in Clark County, Las Vegas, Nevada at the time of the phone conversation?
I was, yes.
And you testified that you met the defendant in 2008. During the entire time that you've known him, have you ever known for him to live outside of Clark County, Nevada?
No.
And during October of 2016, were you aware of him taking any out-of-town trips?
I was not.
And you testified that Michael was employed during this period at Geotabs.
Correct.
Can you tell us what kind of work schedule he had?
I believe he worked like a 8 to 4 or 8 to 5. I think he had an hour lunch. That was based on, pick up and drop off times with the kids. Those are things that, we needed to know about each other's schedules. I think sometimes he would go in earlier than that, but.
Okay. So would he work Monday through Friday?
Correct, yes, Monday through Friday.
Okay. And is that why your kids would be in daycare sometimes? Because sometimes you'd be at work and Michael would be at work during the week?
Yes, correct.
And am I correct that as a teacher you were generally working during the week as well?
Yes, Monday through Friday.
Now, all of the recorded telephone conversations that we've heard in court, did you ever give the defendant permission to record any of those telephone conversations?
I did not.
At the time you had these telephone conversations with the defendant, were you aware that they were being recorded?
I was not.
At any point during these phone conversations, did the defendant ever state to you that the conversations were being recorded?
He did not.
Court's brief indulgence. I'll pass the witness.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Mueller, cross-examination when you're ready.
Ma'am, you've testified unambiguously that these conversations occurred on October of 2016, correct?
Yes.
And you've had to listen to, and we've had to listen to a couple hours of phone calls to get the details of your divorce to verify that October 16th is when these calls occurred, correct?
I'm sorry, you're asking.
We had to listen to all
you're
five of these
asking
calls. All of these incidents are certain, you're certain, occurred in October 2016.
Yes.
And you wouldn't lie, and you wouldn't make any material misrepresentations of fact, correct?
Correct.
And you wouldn't have been dishonest with a police officer, correct?
Correct.
Can you tell me why Detective Kirchner said that these calls...
Okay, objection, he can't impeach with someone else's statement.
Report statement from March.
And now he's testifying.
Mr. Mueller, the objection is sustained. The jury should disregard the question.
All right, ma'am. You reviewed the police report during preparation. You testified when you were getting ready to testify, did you not?
And Your Honor, he's trying to impeach with the police report, which was not written by this witness. It's not her statement.
All right, I'll rephrase. You made sure...
Sustained.
When was the last time Mr. McDonald saw his children?
Objection relevance.
The divorce is
Mr.
the...
Mueller, hold on.
Okay. The divorce is the rationale
Mueller,
of the case.
I'm going to make a ruling. The objection as to relevant is overruled for now, given what was elicited during the course of direct examination. Mr. Mueller, you may proceed with caution.
Ma'am, there was a time during divorce proceedings when Mr. McDonald only had phone privileges with the children, correct?
That's incorrect.
There was a time when, was it a time when he was only primarily allowed to talk to the children over the phone?
That's incorrect.
Okay. How was he allowed to communicate with the kids?
He was allowed no communication whatsoever.
No communication?
Except for, there was a brief period of time in December of 2016 that he had supervised visitations, and that was the only contact he was allowed. No phone calls, no letters, no pictures, no gifts. All of that was ordered. I mean, there have been different, so previous to August of 2016, he had no contact. When the divorce decree went into effect, he had 2 weekends, which was the 2nd and 4th weekends of October. His next visitation was to be the 2nd weekend of November. he did not in fact have the kids that weekend, and from that period forward, had no contact with the children since then.
All right. Did you ever record Mr. McDonald?
No,
No. Never actually recorded Mr. McDonald?
no,
You're certain of that?
yes.
All right. Ma'am, those conversations, okay, did Mr. McDonald go to California?
I'm not sure, I
Did
mean,
he ever go to California for a seminar?
I have no idea.
You have no recollection of him going to California?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Right. Let me ask you a question, ma'am. You knew Mr. DeCiro prior to this proceeding, correct? You met him,
I met him one time, I did not know him.
all right? And your roommate worked with Mr. DeCiro, correct?
Yes, she,
And is it just a coincidence that Mr. DeCiro was the one who went into your ex-husband's Google Drive?
I'm sorry?
You're aware that Mr. DeCiro actually went into your ex-husband's Google Drive,
Objection,
correct?
this is another witness's testimony. She doesn't have personal knowledge. She only knows what she's been told.
I'm gonna overrule that. If she knows, she can testify to it.
That he went into his Google Drive?
Yes.
I'm not aware of that.
You weren't aware of that at all?
No.
Okay. Now, during direct examination, you testified that there was audio recordings of your son.
There was a singular audio an audio recording, yes, between Michael and our son.
All right, was that a phone call?
That particular one was not a phone call.
So there were audio recordings on the Google Drive that were not phone calls?
There were not multiple, there was a singular recording
All
that
right.
Michael made between our son and himself.
When did he make that recording?
I don't know when he made that one because I wasn't there for that one, so I'm not sure.
All right, now, why don't those conversations begin with the word hello?
I'm not sure why they don't.
All right, could those conversations have been going and then been edited at some point so that part of the conversation was no longer there?
I have no idea.
You have no idea. Now,
I didn't make the recording, so I'm not aware of when those recordings began or when he pressed play.
all right. Now, was this one phone call or a series of phone calls?
It was a series of phone calls.
Series of phone calls, but none of the 5 calls begin with hello. You know that? Did you notice that?
I did notice that.
Did you find that odd?
No,
Do you normally begin your conversations with hello?
sometimes.
I called you right now with your cell phone, with my cell phone. Hello?
I don't mean to be rude. I usually say like, this is Candace, but I see what you're saying. Yeah, sometimes I say hello.
So you agree that all 5 of the phone calls have no opening greeting or salutation?
I would agree with that, yes.
Okay. Now, that's a pattern. Is there any reason, do you know why, you said sometimes you talk to people and you say hello?
Mm-hmm.
Now, was there early part of the conversations that had been edited out?
I don't know. I can't say because I didn't make these recordings, so.
You can't say that there have been earlier conversations. Now, you seem to have absolutely no trouble recalling the details of these conversations for the state when you were asked, but you don't recall if the conversations were longer and there was parts of them that had been left out.
Objection asked and answered.
All right, well, I guess
That's
my...
sustained.
All right,
And
let
so
me-
the statement of her testimony.
All right, let me rephrase, ma'am. One of the conversations had a mechanical voice in the background,
Yes.
all right? Now, what was that mechanical voice?
That was my gate pad, my gate code that I was typing in when I was driving.
Okay?
To my condo.
Now, did Mike go down, you don't have no recollection of Mike going to California for seminars?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Okay. Now, you use some colorful language in those audio tapes. You use the phrase, "I will come after you."
Mhm.
Okay, what did you mean by the phrase, "I will come after you"?
For child support, that's what I was meaning. I
Okay.
would file with the district attorney for child support.
You agree in your audio recording that you made it very clear that if you didn't get your way with financial demands, that Mr. McDonald was going to go to jail, correct?
That is the process. So yes, I was making that clear that if he continued to not pay child support, then they would revoke his driver's license first, and then after the revocation of the license is then jail time.
All right. Now, did you actually meet with the detective? Yeah. Did you actually meet?
Detective
Yes.
Karchner in person?
Yes.
No, I didn't.
No. So if you didn't meet him in person, how did you get him information?
Initially, I made the police report at the precinct. It was then assigned to him. He asked me to drop off a thumb drive of the recordings, so I uploaded those. He was having trouble opening those, so he asked me if I would email him or forward him the email that Mark DeCiro had initially sent me with the Google Drive, which I did.
Right. And you would agree that you filed the police report with the detective after Mr. McDonald expressed his concerns about your child's rectal prolapse, correct?
I'm sorry, I don't follow.
Timing-wise, I want to make sure I understand the timing.
Sure.
He complained about who was being around the children, correct?
Mhm.
And you responded by going down to the police station and filing an eyewitness statement, correct?
My response to him, I'm sorry, I'm just having trouble. You're asking me if I filed this particular police report after he had made the claims about the rectal prolapse?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Well, I mean, this was much later. I didn't file this actual police report until March 29th of 2018.
Did you review your report before testifying your statement today?
Did I review it before I came here today?
Yes, ma'am.
No, but I have reviewed it in the past.
Would refresh your recollection as to what you recorded.
Sure, I
approach?
could see it. You may.
Counsels from their discovery? All right, having reviewed your statement that you gave to the police department without actually meeting with the detective, has it refreshed your recollection what you wrote in your report?
Yes.
Let's give it back, please.
Do you mind if I keep it for reference?
Yes, I do, actually. If I could just have it, if you need it, I'll give it back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Now, in the statement, when did you write this?
March of 2018.
Okay.
That particular police report.
This police report.
Yes.
And you accused, among other things, you accused Mr. McDonald of coaching your son to say that he wanted to stay with him.
Yes.
Objection, relevance?
Sustained.
Is that the recording? If I could just, kind of go.
Okay, the mere fact that something's on a voluntary.
Ms. Mishler, I'm sorry, Mr. Raman, could you please approach with Mr. Mueller?
Sure. Ma'am?
Continue down this path, maybe withdrawing that question, Mr. Mueller.
I'll rephrase and come at it from a different direction, Judge.
All right, so I'm going to ask the jury to disregard that question.
Ma'am, were you present when the phone calls, these 5 calls were recorded? Did you see a recording device?
I'm sorry?
Did you see a recording device?
I did not see a recording device.
Okay. Now, you're certain and quite certain that these all happened in October
Yes. Of 2016.
2016.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you only reported it in when? March of 2018?
March of 2018, because that's when I became aware that the recordings, or the phone calls that had been recorded existed.
And who was the person who brought it to your attention?
Mark DeCiro.
Okay, now, did Mr. McDonald, DeCiro actually brought it to your attention?
Correct.
Okay, now, if you didn't have a relationship with Mr. DeCiro or you didn't know him, why was a man who's a complete stranger calling you up and getting involved in your divorce?
Objection, lack of personal knowledge. She's not going to know why another person did something.
Did Mr. DeCiro?
That's overruled. If she knows, she can testify to it. Do you know him?
Do I know why he was getting involved in my divorce?
Yes, sir.
I have no idea.
No idea.
Overruled.
Now, when someone seems a complete stranger wants to get involved in what is clearly emotional and personal business, didn't that cause you some concern?
It caused me concern that Michael had sent him personal recordings. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know anybody that would record calls and then send them to essentially a stranger, so that part was concerning to me. But in terms of Mark bringing it to me, no, I was glad that he made me aware of that.
Well, let me ask you a question. Did you ask Mr. DeCiro some very basic questions like, did you change the format of these calls?
No, I did not ask.
Did you ask Mr. DeCiro if he had edited the phone calls?
No, I did not ask.
Did you ask Mr. DeCiro if he had any proof that Mr. McDonald actually made the phone calls?
Well, the proof was the phone call, so I didn't have to ask
The
him that.
proof was the phone calls?
Yes.
Stop right there for a moment.
Sure.
Now, have you got an electronic phone?
I do have an electronic phone.
And can your electronic phone call, or can your electronic phone make recordings?
I'm sure it can. I haven't
Alright.
ever tried.
So let me ask you a question. You've assumed, as the detective, that Mr. McDonald made these phone calls, or recorded these phone calls. Do you have a shred of evidence, or are you just assuming?
No, I'm not assuming. I know he made those phone calls.
You know,
I know.
because you're his ex-wife.
No, that's not why I know. I know because he
Okay.
also posted them on YouTube under Michael Lee McDonald's channel with a whole collage of pictures of me as well. So
you're
and it was also his practice to record phone calls as well. So I do have personal knowledge of him recording other people as well. So I know it was him. There's no other
Hey,
person that would need to record these phone calls.
One minute outside the presence of the jury, please.
You may approach.
Ma'am? You refused to let Mr. McDonald see the children, correct?
Not correct.
You,
The courts refused to let Michael see the children.
Madam Clerk, may I have this one,
Yeah, the
defense,
courts.
A for identification.
I was following the court orders.
There's no question. Statement. Showing your statement again. This is the statement that you gave the police department, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you would agree that you've written in that statement that you didn't make these acts?
Objection, Mr. Mueller, hold on. That isn't into evidence yet.
All right.
So, are you trying to refresh your recollection?
Trying to refresh your recollection, and I'll come to the point.
As to what point?
I wanted to understand the order of events here, ma'am.
All right, so why don't we ask about the order of events before we go there?
You learned that Mr. McDonald, and we heard it on the audio tape, accused your fiancée of potentially being inappropriate with your daughter, correct?
You're asking if, at what point did I learn that?
Yes, ma'am. We heard the tape. So
Correct. That he was making those accusations in October of 2016.
October of 2016.
Yes.
So you
Well,
wait-
September, October, and then forever now still.
Okay, and you wait 2 years to file a report.
Yes, I did, because I did not become aware of the recorded phone conversations until March of 2018. And when I became aware of those, that's when I proceeded to file the report.
Okay. Now, I won't go back to the telephone visitation they had. Mr. McDonald's allowed to call a kid.
I mean, which time period? Because there were during the October 2016 time period, he was allowed to make phone calls, but that was at my discretion because he had been inappropriate with the kids. So at that point, yes. Before that time, no, because there was no contact. After that time, no, because there was no contact.
And did you pick up the phone when he was talking to the children and speak with Mr. McDonald?
Which time are we talking about here?
Well, you're certain that this all happened in October 16.
You're saying,
I mean, objectively, yes.
It's the same, let's make sure we're directing a time frame for her to answer the question, Mr. Mueller.
Certainly. Mr. McDonald spoke to the kids almost every weekend for a year, correct?
no.
No.
I mean, like I said, there were very long periods of time where he had no contact. There were other things in place that prevented him from having contact with the kids. As far as, I mean, and we're talking like no phone calls. We're talking no contact whatsoever. So, but during the October, after the trial for custody or the hearing for divorce and so on, there was a small window of time, which was about a month, where he could have contact with the kids.
Did anything of importance happen on March 8th, 2018?
I have no idea what happened on March 8th of 2018.
When you spoke with the detective, did you tell him any phone call had been reported between you and Michael on March 8th, 2018?
I don't remember anything from March 8th, 2018.
All right.
Mr. Mueller, what are you looking at there?
The police department's report, Detective Kirkland's report.
Is that the date the report was produced?
This was the detective's statement saying that it had been reported to him, it occurred on March 8th, 2018.
May I see that report?
Certainly.
Mr. Mueller, where are you referring to?
The underlying part there says that there was at the very top.
It says the calls were recorded, some recorded calls were sent to him on 3/8/18. So if you're going to ask the question, make sure we're being accurate with what it actually states.
Certainly. Okay. All right, with court's permission, I'll just read it.
This objection,
Well, I will read the question because I'm trying to understand.
Right.
Okay,
If you're going to ask
the-
the question,
Okay.
it still needs to be from it still needs to be a proper question.
Certainly.
So what is the question you're trying to ask?
Did you report to the detective that Michael had recorded a phone call conversation between you two on March 8th, 2018?
Mr. Mueller, it says the calls were sent to him.
Respectfully, Judge, it says Michael recorded between the two. Okay, understand, I'll move on.
I'm going to sustain the objection, Mr. Mishler.
I don't have anything further, Judge.
All right, thank you very much. Redirect examination.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, we're going to release this witness.
Yes.
Questions? Yeah.
Oh, all right, oh, thank you. And I want to make sure there aren't any additional questions. So I'll have the parties approach the bench. We have 2 questions from yesterday, and I see some more questions being asked of. All right, Ms. Members, we have a few jury questions. I do allow them to write down questions, and after conversations with counsel, they can be asked, so we'll ask them. So I'm going to ask you a few questions and you the director answers to the jury, okay? So the first question is, when Mark reached out to you with a message on audio files, was that the first time he had reached out to you?
No, that's not the first time he had reached out to me.
When was the first time he reached out to you?
I would say probably 2 years prior to that, when all of the YouTube videos were being uploaded. And actually, I think it was I reached out to him first because I was the one that wanted to know like why he was interested in the case and like why everything was being posted. So, but I mean, other than that, other than those initial conversations, we didn't really communicate very much.
Does either party have any follow-up questions based on those 2 questions?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Mueller. Was it, I'm sorry, I want to make sure.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. All right. The next question. Did you invite Michael, the defendant, to Malia's appointments scheduled by you?
Yeah, absolutely. He was allowed to attend any of her appointments, but he did not attend any of them.
Any follow-up questions based on that question?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Next question. For the recordings we heard here in court, did they occur while you were ordered to use the Talking Parents application that you testified to here in open court?
Those particular, we were using both of them in conjunction at that time. Previous to the decree, we were ordered to only use Talking Parents because there was no contact. In that period of time when the decree was finished, there was allowed to be limited contact, but we were allowed to have phone calls. And then, things like a list of things that I would give him or what have you, or something that he needed to communicate about appointments or something, that would be, usually we would go on there and communicate back and forth through Talking Parents. And then after that, after November of 2016, it went back to no contact, and there's been no contact ever since.
So I'm going to rephrase the question. In October of 2016, were all calls made using the Talking Parents application?
Oh no, it's an app where you just type. So we were allowed to have calls, and we were also allowed to communicate through the app.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to ask another question. Can you explain the Talking Parents application?
Sure. You can log in online, or you can log in through an app, and it's just basically, it's almost like an email, but the difference between that and email is that it's court monitored, so that the judge and anyone who works for the judge can monitor what's being discussed.
All right. Any follow-up questions based on those questions and my follow-up questions?
Just briefly, Candace, does the Talking Parents app, as you've used it, does it create any audio recordings?
It does not.
That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Mueller, any follow-up questions based on those questions?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right. So this next question is a 2-part question, if you will. And so I'm going to answer the first part, and the second part is for you. The first question is, can we see the rest of the divorce decree regarding the telephone communication with the children? The answer to that will be yes. You'll actually be able to take the divorce decree back with you to take a look at when you deliberate. So you'll have the whole divorce decree to take a look at. This next part is for you. If no contact had been ordered, I'm going to limit this time period to October of 2016 if we need to clarify, we can. But in October of 2016, if no contact had been ordered, why did you continue engaging with him over the phone?
In October 2016 was the only time we were allowed to have phone communication. So prior to that and then after that, there was no communication.
All right, so when did the no contact order lift?
I mean, it existed all the way up until that trial or that hearing for our final divorce. I believe in the phone calls, Michael mentions that it had been 75 days, so I believe that that's correct. So there was 75 days where he didn't see the kids or have any contact with me or the kids. Then the decree of divorce, the judge in the family court case did the facts and findings and conclusion of law, and then the decree of divorce was created. That took a little bit of time from August to like September. They were working on that, finalizing it, and then October was when it was done, and he was refusing to sign, but at that point, visitations would have started that second and fourth weekend of October, and then we would have also been allowed phone communication as well. Because, you know, in terms of we both had time with the kids, so we had to communicate, and it couldn't always necessarily be through that app. It might have been like, you know, the kid needed to be picked up at school, you're not necessarily checking that application, so there were times where we would have to talk to each other on the phone. And especially because of Malia's medical issues. So there were conversations about, those were what the conversations were about, because they were immediate.
Any follow-up questions based on those questions and her response?
No, no.
Mr. Mueller.
I've never used that talking to parents. Does it have a mechanical voice on it?
It does not.
Does it say this these are being recorded?
It does not. It's just like email.
So to be clear, it's not an audio application, it's a written application.
Yes, that you can, I mean, the only other thing that you could do in the Talking Parents app is like upload a picture or attach a document. Those were the only other things that you could do.
Any additional questions?
No further questions.
Okay. Any additional questions from the jury based on those questions and those answers? Okay, you can write it down. Everything has to be written down. That is, we keep it for the court record. Everybody, yeah. The parties approach the bench, please. All right. The first question we received, this one is I'm going to answer, and the next one will be for you. There was a request to hear the audio file of Mr. McDonald states it's been 75 days. Just like the divorce decree, those recordings are now in evidence. You'll be able to take them back with you, and you'll have the ability to listen to them in the back and replay them if you need to, all right? So, yes, just not right now, but you will have access to them. And Ms. Ruiz, this question is for you. Was visitation reestablished by you or by the court?
I have no control over visitation, so everything is done through the court system. So, and as far as you're asking, I'm assuming that question is reestablished at the time of the decree of divorce.
So let's break that down. So the calls we heard you testify took place in October of 2016.
Yes.
And on those calls we heard conversations about Mr. McDonald's lack of contact with the children.
Okay, that was
so in October of 2016, was there any court order in place regarding visitation?
Yes, so that would have been the decree of divorce that outline that second and fourth weekends of the month, defined by Friday. And then it was only for that small period of time. But it was only October because as of November, the custody changed.
Okay, and without going into any details about that, I want to clarify, after October 2016, the custody status changed?
Correct.
Okay, all right, yes. Any additional questions for the witness based on that? Oh, we have more questions, but hold on.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Mueller. Mr. Mueller?
One moment, Judge. if I
Sure,
could.
no problem.
Michael have joint visitation every weekend from July 15th through June 16th?
No.
Thank you.
All right, we have some more questions, so if the parties could approach, please. All right, so I have a couple of additional questions for you, Ms. Ruiz. Before we do that, I'm going to, at this time, give a instruction to the jury that you are to consider the facts and the evidence relevant to the charges against Mr. McDonald in this case. We have certainly heard about the ongoing divorce proceedings, but what happened in the divorce proceedings is not what is at issue here, and so you're hearing them to put the evidence in this case into context. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and proceed with the questions that are still pending. So let's see here. First couple questions for you, Ms. Ruiz. Did you ever watch any of the YouTube videos that were in the Google Drive associated with Michael McDonald?
There were no YouTube videos in the Google Drive. The only thing that I saw were the recordings of the phone calls, and then there were other things in there. But I don't recall seeing any YouTube videos in the Google Drive that was forwarded to me.
Did you ever see any YouTube videos involving the same audio recordings that were introduced as part of the state's case in chief?
I did.
Right. In watching those YouTube video or videos, did you ever hear the term, in quote, "this is being recorded"?
There were two versions of that video. In the first video, yes. In the second video, in the first video, no. In the second video, yes.
And in watching that second video, can you please describe to the jury what you observed?
It was all of the phone calls, and then dubbed over badly was, "This call is being recorded." And then it would sound different because it was then the phone calls. And then right before the next one, there would be like a silent pause, and then, "This call is being recorded." And then the next call. And it was like, it sounded like it had been, I don't know, dubbed in there, or, I don't know. It didn't sound like the rest of the stuff. So it sounded like, I mean, I can tell you how I feel about what I heard.
I don't want you to do that. I want you to describe what you heard. Okay. All right, thank you. Ms. Mishler, Ms. Raman, any questions following up from those questions?
Yes, just briefly. Candace, when you watch these videos, were you watching them directly on the YouTube website?
I was.
Okay. So you didn't get these videos from Mark DeCiro, correct?
I did. No.
Okay. And do you recall what YouTube channel they were posted on?
Yeah, under Michael Lee McDonald. So he had like his face picture, and then this particular video, and then a few others. And they were all in relation to either our divorce or there was one of our kids too.
Nothing further.
All right, Ms. Mueller.
Ma'am, so you agree there is multiple versions of this audio file?
I don't agree that there were two different versions of the YouTube with the recorded phone calls.
And the recorded phone calls that we've heard today, where the the audio files that you think are recorded phone calls are the ones that don't have this call is being recorded.
You're saying like, you don't hear in the, sorry, can you ask me again?
Very simple. You said a moment ago that you listened to a version of these phone calls that have dubbed in. You can say it's dubbed in. This call is being recorded. And you heard that.
A YouTube version of that, yes, but in
Okay,
the
and-
recordings.
Stop you right there, ma'am. And the recordings
Okay.
that we've heard here in the courtroom do not have this call is being recorded in them.
Correct.
You agree that none of these calls begin with "hello."
Correct.
Was this call is being recorded at the front of the audio file, and was it edited out?
You're asking, well, I can tell you in those phone calls, Michael never said to me, this call is being
That's
recorded.
unfortunately not what I asked you. I asked you a very simple question. Was this call being recorded at the front of the audio, and were they edited out by Mr. DeCiro?
I don't
Objection,
know.
compound question, and lack of personal knowledge.
Sustained. You can ask the question, first part of the question, Mr. Mueller. Are you withdrawing the question?
I think I made my point. I'll withdraw the question. Nothing further.
All right. Next question. Why or how did you not ask what the doctor's appointment was for before you canceled it? If you testified yesterday.
Honestly, like, we had so many appointments that at that point I was just like, I don't know, I didn't make that appointment. So I really didn't think much about it. And again, I said earlier, if Michael wanted to take our daughter to the doctor, if he needed a second opinion, like, he should do that. You know, that was his right as her dad. I would have never purposely canceled an appointment. I just didn't know that it was happening. And when they call you to confirm, I'm like, I don't remember making an appointment. So, I mean, if they would have said, oh, this appointment was made by her dad, I would have been like, oh, okay, well, then fine, that's fine. Like, that's his right to take her if he felt that he needed more answers, so.
Any follow-up question based on that question?
Court's indulgence. Candace, so on the day when the doctor's office contacted you to confirm that appointment, were you working that day?
I was.
Okay, so would it have been difficult for you to suddenly get out of work and take Malia to the doctor?
Yes.
That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Mueller, any follow-up questions based on that question?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right. Next question. When was the first visitation order established, if you can remember?
I would say I filed for divorce in July of 2015, so there were temporary orders. Shortly after that, I would say maybe it took a month or two, and then there were temporary orders.
So you actually answered the next question was when did you file for divorce?
July 2015. Yeah.
Any follow-up questions based on those?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Mueller?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right. The divorce decree is signed at the end of October. Did all communication and contact end with Mr. McDonald at the time the documents were completed?
No, there was communication up until Veterans Day of 2016, and then no communication after that.
And when you're referencing Veterans Day, are you referencing the federal holiday that takes place in the month of November?
Yes, correct. November 11th, I believe it was.
Any follow-up questions based on that question and answer?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Counsel could please approach. This is going to be a two-part question for you. The first one is, how do you know what dubbing is?
I don't know. I mean, I just use that term, but it just sounded like that it was badly inserted and it didn't sound. So I don't necessarily know what dubbing is, but I'm assuming like you insert something, I guess.
What do you mean it was badly inserted?
Like, it was literally the same monotone voice all 5 times, and it didn't flow with the rest of the conversation. So, and then there were like, it would be like a pause before, and then it would say, this call is being recorded, and then like a pause after, and then the phone call would start. And so it just didn't sound seamless, I guess. That's what I mean by dubbing. I don't know, it just sounded like it was put in the middle of that.
Before I ask the next question, any follow-up question based on that question and answer?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Mueller.
No, Your Honor.
Right. Next question is, did Mr. DeCiro tell you the calls were dubbed, and if so, when?
No, he did not tell me. All he said was that he was forwarded a Google Drive from Michael and that there were recorded phone calls between him and I. And I was like, okay, can I have those? And he said that he would forward me the link to that.
Any follow-up questions based on that question and answer?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Mueller.
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. May you release this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please step down. Council approach the bench briefly. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take our lunch recess. It's going to be longer than it was yesterday because we're also going to do some work during the lunch hour so we can go continue on with the trial hopefully seamlessly. So during this lunch recess, you're not to talk or converse amongst yourselves or anyone else or any subject connected with this trial. Or read, watch, or listen to any report of or commentary on the trial or any person connected with this trial. By any information, including without limitation, newspapers, television, radio, or internet, or form or express any opinion on any subject connected with this trial until the case is finally submitted to you. It is now 12:51. I'm going to ask everyone to come back at 2, it's going to be a weird time, but 2:40. That should give us enough time to take care of what we need to take care of here. And then we'll continue with the trial. We are moving along, and it appears that we potentially will be finished today. So with that, enjoy your extended lunch hour, and we'll see you at 12:40 for lunch hours.
All rise for the jury.
The jury has left the courtroom. If you want to sit tight, I want to give you those jury instructions before you will take a recess. And then
Take the restroom quick, I'll be right back.
oh, sure, yes, go for it.
Those glasses start adding up.
Yeah, no problem.
That's on you.
No, that's on me.
Let's see here, Mr. Mueller, Ms. Mishler, I've got 2 copies for you and one for Mr. Mueller. These, so the ones that are facing horizontal, those are the state's proposed. Mr. Mueller, yours are attached, so take a look at that. I haven't looked at them, so I don't have a clean draft for you all. But just to go through those, we might want to consider another instruction regarding the divorce proceedings. And so I'll invite you all to draft something over the lunch break or to come prepared to potentially discuss drafting something regarding that instruction, or if we think my instruction's been sufficient, we can certainly discuss that also. So,
Just before we start, Craig, can I have that voluntary statement back?
Sure.
Actually, do you all want to go, I figure, why don't we all take a break ourselves and get some lunch, and then we'll come back and finish this, way you can go through them, see if you have any objections to this, you know, to whatever he's proposed, and whatever the state has proposed, and then we can talk about them.
Okay,
All right?
that's fine.
So why don't we come back, I'm sorry.
That was marked, so I need that.
Okay,
You want a
it was
copy of
not admitted.
You want a copy of it, but it was still marked, so I have to have it.
Okay, we have one, did you?
Do you want me to make you a copy?
No.
Okay.
All right, so why don't we all come back here at 1:45?
Okay.
Okay, right?
Great.
All right, thank you so much.
No.